Good afternoon. My name is Tom Galvin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Digital Citizens Alliance. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us today. We're looking forward to talking to you and answer your questions as we look at this very important issue of online drugs. We've just completed a pretty extensive investigation that looked at how easy it is for anyone, but particular teens, to be able to purchase drugs online. And it didn't matter whether they saw a doctor, had a prescription, or whether there was parental supervision. So this is a crucial issue we know for all of us, and we really appreciate you taking the time today. The good news is that we can do something about this as both individuals and as a nation, and it's our primary focus today, how we can make a difference individually and by working together. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, so a couple programming notes here. You can submit your questions at any time. If you're joining us online, simply submit them at your question at the box indicated at the bottom of the screen. And if you're joining us by phone, you can ask a question by pressing *3 on your phone keypad. Don't worry if it suddenly seems like you're out of the call. That's just them teeing you up to be able to ask your question. So let's get started. So just a little bit about Digital Citizens. Digital Citizens is an organization that started last year, really with a focus and a motto that a safer internet is a better internet. And our focus thus far, we've really looked at things like scams, counterfeits, and drugs, because we knew that one of the things that we could do is we could demonstrate where the problems were. Because to really find solutions, first you have to understand the problems. And that's the work we've been doing so far. We understood also that as a consumer-oriented organization, we needed to help educate people about the many different threats that consumers face online. The internet is an amazing place that enables you to do many different things. It cuts the difference between time and distance and enables people to connect and purchase and interact. But just like anything else, there ends up being threats on it. And our focus is to try to make sure we accentuate the good and mitigate the bad. So we're going to go to one of our first slides that we look at this. We believe that the best solutions are those that will help protect consumer interests and help them keep their families safe. Our mission, as we said, is pretty simple. A safer internet is a better internet. I've spent about the last 15 years working on internet safety and security. At VeriSign, VeriSign is a company that's really focused on making sure the internet stays safe, so we worked with policymakers and interested parties to make sure that we kept the internet as safe as possible. In addition, I helped create, about 7-8 years ago, an organization called StopBadWare.org, which is a really interesting initiative to identify websites that when you go to them offer viruses or malware, and really identify them and try to help stop that. So we've had a lot of years of trying to deal with the issue of internet safety and security, and we've learned some things, but as we know, the bad guys keep adapting. So a little bit about what digital citizenship is. Before we get to our investigation on teens and drugs, I want to talk a little bit about what digital citizenship is and the role in making the internet safer. So a good internet requires all of us to keep it safe and help remain a good place to live, because the internet, in the end of the day, is a neighborhood. Living and working together productively requires 3 levels of protections that help us maintain a safe neighborhood. The first and most important is each of us as individuals. We take responsibility for keeping ourselves and our families safe by taking simple but important actions like locking our doors and windows, making sure our valuables are secure, and preparing our household for emergencies, like having smoke alarms and fire extinguishers. When it comes to the internet, each of us plays a similar role. I would bet most of you have done those things to protect your personal information. You may change your passwords, for example, from time to time. You may put antivirus software on your computer, and you may monitor your child's use of the internet. When you're informed and aware of these dangers, you help keep yourself safe. And as digital citizens, we try to offer a lot of great information and tools on how we can help do these things. We'll talk specifically today about some of those things so we can help protect your family from online drug dealers. Personal safety is critical not only in a neighborhood, but also because we don't live alone when it comes to the internet. We interact with people every day, and in a good neighborhood, we watch out for each other and we help each other. We take responsibility for each other. We work together to keep our neighborhood safe, both informally and through organized efforts like neighborhood watches. And we have rules that we agree to live by that maintain positive relationships in a community. I think this most closely represents what we're trying to accomplish together as digital citizens. We know we must look out for each other online, and we also know we must help those control the online infrastructure. Our communities make our roads safe, our street lights are maintained, and speed limits are informed. Well, we have some of the same challenges when it comes to individual websites and making sure we're communicating amongst each other about what are good sites and what are bad sites, particularly when it comes to our kids. The third level, when we're looking at the solution framework, is one of those that we don't think about a lot, but it's important for all of us, the civic level. Civic leaders work to protect all our neighborhoods within a community, and their main job is to represent our interests collectively. They help establish guidelines for living in the community. They ensure that we're listened to. They ensure that community infrastructure and resources are in place and maintained for citizen safety. They provide safety resources like fire, police, and emergency responders. They make it possible to hold people accountable when they endanger other members of the community. For online communities, our civic leaders have a similar role, but we have to ensure that the laws and regulations that put in place benefit our citizens first and foremost, and that they help keep our neighborhoods safe. And that's what we're really focusing on today, because as we've come across, there are ways in which our neighborhoods, our online neighborhoods, don't become safe. So as we look at this, it's important for digital citizens to understand the level of online protections, because all of them come into play when we use the internet. You'll see what I mean now as we start to talk about our recent investigation into teens and drugs. Just a reminder before we talk about that, we want to really encourage people to submit questions for our question and answer period. Simply use the question feature at the bottom of your computer or press *3 on your phone to talk to one of our operators. So let's talk a little bit about the drug investigation that digital citizens embarked on in January. We knew that one of the biggest threats to consumers was the proliferation of illegal drug sales. Just like anything else, we see a lot of bad things online. Drugs, scams, counterfeits, all those things that happen in the real world happen online, but they just become a little bit more complicated because of access, particularly for kids. So looking at our drug investigation a little bit. We spent the last few months conducting an undercover investigation that just showed how easy it is for any individual, including teens, to order drugs online without a prescription. Here's what we did. We began by working with a teenager under our supervision to see if he would be able to order dangerous prescription drugs from an online pharmacy without a prescription. It is important to note that while the teen was under supervision from our investigative team, the site he was ordering drugs from did not know it. As far as they know, this was just a random teenager trying to order Percocet with no parental supervision. The online pharmacy took his order over the phone. No drugs were shipped as a result of those calls because we stopped them before it reached the point of purchase. In a second series of orders, a digital citizens investigator ordered additional painkillers online without meeting with or even speaking with a doctor. 2 of the packages contained codeine and hydrocodone, and they were shipped from India. We sent those drugs to MVA Scientific Consultants in Chicago, outside of Chicago, to determine if they were legitimate, counterfeit, and we found that the codeine was real, but the hydrocodone was counterfeit, although still potentially harmful. The supposed hydrocodone turned out to be a regular prescription painkiller and muscle relaxer, that in the end, if the person had had a reaction to that, or had been allergic to that, could have caused a serious health issue. At the minimum, the drug supplier was not even delivering what they said they were. So what were our takeaways from that? Our investigation indicates that as many as 95 to 97% of online pharmacies are operating illegally, including many based in the United States. They make it too easy for anyone, especially children, to order drugs online. It is important that parents and caretakers understand that the internet, despite being an incredible place of good, is also home to criminals that want to use it as a platform to advertise and sell dangerous drugs to young people. Understanding the harm that can result from misuse or abuse of prescription drugs can go a long way in saving lives. This issue is important to digital citizens because, 1, prescription drugs, either real or counterfeit, are currently too easy to access through the internet. 2, they are responsible for more overdose deaths than heroin and cocaine combined, according to the CDC. And they're also becoming more popular among our youth. As a parent of young kids, it's imperative, I am a parent of young kids, it's imperative that we understand that kids are breaking into their parents' medicines cabinet, or they're getting drugs online, prescription painkillers online, and then they're sharing them. And that's something that is, I think, a concern to all of us who have young kids. But although the danger is real and the problem is growing, the good news is there is something we can do about it. At the conclusion of the webinar, we're going to provide you a link where you can go to view a video of our undercover operation and take action to help keep our children safe from those online predators. If you have any questions you'd like to ask during the webinar, again, you can submit your questions at the bottom or press *3 on your phone to talk to one of our operators. So now the question becomes, where do we go from here? Now that we've exposed the threat of illegal online drug sales, the question is, where can we go? I want to bring you back to an online neighborhood that we described earlier. How can digital citizens protect our kids from our drug dealers and our online community? So here's some of the takeaways and things we think we can do about that. First, there are several things you can do as an individual to protect yourself and loved ones. Absolutely the most important is talk to your family, especially your children, about this report. Monitor your family's computer usage. Keep your prescriptions where your children can't get them to them easily. We know that there can be dangerous things at home. For example, some people may have a gun at home and they keep it safe. They're very gun safe. It's also important for us to be bottle safe with potentially dangerous prescriptions that our kids can get a hold of. We need to inspect any suspicious packages that arrive in the mail. And we hope that you'll be willing to join Digital Citizens, if you haven't already, as we continue to look at these issues and try to provide tips. Second, think of what we can do to help protect each other by working together. Share our report and encourage others to be informed about these threats. Simply follow the links on this page or visit our main website at www.digitalcitizensalliance.org, and you'll be able to share the report with others easily. And ask others to join Digital Citizens. Finally, we need to encourage our civic leaders to get involved as well. We hope that as you engage in civic participation, you bring up the issues of online safety and online security. You can follow the links that we've provided on this page, or you can visit our website at www.digitalcitizensalliance.org to share a report with anyone in the civic world. We've covered a lot of information, and we've covered it quick, and I hope you will get involved. Right now, let's take some questions. If you haven't submitted questions yet, please use the feature at the bottom of the screen or press *3 on your phone to talk to one of our operators. We've actually gotten some questions already, which is great. And we're going to turn to some of them now, and hopefully as many as we can as time permits. And if we can't get to your question today, be sure to watch our blog and social media for answers to other questions following today's webinar, or post it on our Facebook page, where we will respond very fast. Just search for Digital Citizens Alliance on our Facebook page, post a question there, and we'd be happy to answer it. So now I think we're going to go and try to answer some of your questions. And why don't we go to our first question?
The government's role in private sectors in stopping rogue online pharmacies.
Yeah, this really goes back to any issue that's a public threat. Yeah, the question is, what is the public's role and private sector's role in dealing with online threats? We all know that the internet is a shared responsibility. As individuals, we have a responsibility. Internet companies have a responsibility, and our public officials have a responsibility. And the internet works best when the three of those entities come together to identify a threat and then rectify it. So we, in the end, think that when individuals and internet companies do a good job of policing the internet, government looks and says, hey, they're doing a good job and things are working well. Intervention from government occurs when they think something's not working well. So everyone's frankly better served by making sure that we police the internet as best as possible and keep it as free and open as possible. We all know that the internet is a wonderful place, and one of the prices for a free and open internet is there's going to always be a downside. Our job as individuals and companies and public officials is to try to keep that downside as small as possible. Thanks for the question.
Why do internet providers allow this to happen? It seems like there should be some safeguards to consumers.
Well, there are a lot of tough issues there. The internet is a very complicated place. And what we hope our great internet companies realize is, with the great opportunity that the internet has given them to grow and become successful companies, that also comes great responsibility to help police and manage the internet and keep it safe for people. It's frankly in their interest, because if they don't do it, people will shy away and not use it as much as they want to. So our message to internet companies is, keeping the internet safe is in your interest, because in the end, the internet is your future, and it's all of our future. Thanks for the question.
I feel that online pharmacies are as dangerous / deadly as bullying. What can we do to get this topic to have as much recognition as bullying has? Let's keep in mind that teens / kids that are bullied are sometimes emotionally pushed to finding these drugs.
I think that's a really interesting point. And if you look at any public awareness campaign, whether it was smoking, whether it was bullying, what has changed people's attitudes is awareness. People talking about it and it no longer being funny or cool to do it. So I think the key thing there is that as we raise this issue and raise it among schools, raise it among civic groups, raise it when you're among policymakers, raise it among your parents and kids, the more it becomes part of a public discussion, an everyday discussion, then that's how that happens. That's how it's happened in the past, and that's the best way it can happen going forward.
Sally from Nebraska asks, the information about teens and drugs online is frightening. What other kinds of online threats may be putting our children at risk?
Well, there are several. There are a lot of potential dangers online. There's drugs, there's weapons, there's access to things that might not be in sync with the values of those kids and their parents. And that really goes back to this idea that you have to pay attention and we have to know what our kids are doing online. We like to think we have some sense of what's going on in their schools from their teachers and them. We like to think we know what they're doing with their friends because we see them interact or we hear from their friends' parents. The same thing applies to the internet. Vigilance is the key into making sure that we keep our kids understanding the dangers and steering clear of things that could be very dangerous for them. Thanks for the question.
James from Indianapolis, Indiana asks, you talk about a teen ordering drugs as part of your undercover investigation, but how realistic is it that teens are able to do this on their own? How do they manage to pay for it?
That's a great question. And frankly, before the investigation, I was a little skeptical myself. But there's a lot of teenagers who now have their own credit cards. Or there's teens who have access to their parents' credit cards. And the order on the credit card could easily not show up. It won't show up as, I got Percocet from India. It'll come up with some nondescript name, and it's really easy for a busy parent to miss that on a credit card for a purchase that might be $50 or $60. They might think it was something their husband or wife bought, or just something they don't remember. So it is actually much easier than we expected, and it's kind of scary how easy it was. In our investigation, the 15-year-old was able to use his dad's credit card. That was the way it was teed up. And the person on the other side of the phone didn't care that it was not his credit card, only cared about how to get the money. But it's a really interesting point and something that we were really kind of shocked about.
Karen from Syracuse, New York writes, the internet is so big and there's so much of this going on. What can we really do to stop it?
Well, it's a good question, but it's like anything else. The level of awareness affects the impact of it. If you're right, if this issue is not being discussed, if the dangers of drugs online are not being discussed, there is frankly very little we can do about it because the bad guys will always adapt. They have adapted from search to going on to popular video websites, so that's already occurred. They're always going to try to find a new way. But if this is a topical discussion that people are focused on, it becomes harder. It starts to squeeze the life out of them. For example, if the people who facilitate transactions online, and there's three key ones, search, payment processors, and domain names, are vigilant on these issues and really looking to, when they see a website they think is suspicious, not doing business with them, then it becomes harder for the bad guys to be able to operate, and then we start to make progress. Thank you for the question, though.
Courtney Niddle writes, your analysis is great, but I'm concerned the government would hurt the internet.
Well, it's a fair question, and I actually share some of those concerns. The most ideal situation is where community organizations and individuals and these internet companies work together to solve these problems. Because there's no guarantee that when the government comes in, that the solution works. And sometimes what it can do is because it might solve today's problem, but not necessarily tomorrow's problem, but now we're locked into legislation. So we 100% agree that if we can work together as citizens and internet companies and communities to solve these problems, we can make some progress. But if those things don't happen, it opens the door for necessary government intervention, which is, like I said, should always be the last resort.
Jason asks, how are teens paying for online drugs? Are there no safeguards on these websites to confirm date of birth or credit card information?
No, thank you for the question. One of the things that really jumped out at us, both in our teen investigation and then our own purchase, was how easy it was to get around anything. One, when the teen was purchasing drugs, there was no effort to try to verify information. The only information they wanted was the credit card information. And they didn't even care that it was supposed to be his dad's credit card. So in that case, there was no verification and no safeguards. In our other investigation, when an adult purchased drugs, while there could be some cursory questionnaires put in place, which were designed to be kind of medical questionnaires, there was no verification. And that speaks to the issue of the dangers of going to rogue pharmacies online. When we go to a doctor and our doctor examines us and determines whether or not we need a prescription drug, he or she's done so because they've been able to understand our history, understand our medical history, and what other drugs we might be taking. They give us a prescription, and then we go to a pharmacist who then sees that drug, and if we have other drugs, has systems by which can tell whether there's something there that's, if they interact together, are dangerous. So we have a lot of safeguards that exist. And there are reputable, good online pharmacies, just like anything else. But the disreputable online pharmacies essentially wipe away all of the doctor's safeguards and all of the pharmaceutical safeguards that protect us.
Shannon writes, you mentioned that some of the drugs ordered during the undercover investigation turned out to be counterfeit. How common is it for prescription drugs ordered online not to be what they're supposed to be, and how can you ensure that you are getting what you ordered?
That's a great question. So the answer to your question is about 1 in 10, about 10% of drugs ordered overseas end up being not what they say they are. Now that might be counterfeit, or it might be just a placebo, nothing of any real matter. But in the end, about 1 in 10, and that's a dangerous thing. In the United States, for online pharmacies based in the United States, the number is lower, but it still occurs. The single best way to guarantee safety when it comes to purchasing online drugs is only to order from reputable online pharmacies.
Sue writes, latest study shows 93% of teens visit YouTube weekly. Why does Google want to ignore the fact that there are still ads there? Doesn't AdWords screen these advertisers?
Yeah, you may know we just came out with a report that looked at the issue of prescription drugs, amongst other things, and YouTube. And it was a bit alarming to find videos that are now on YouTube for things like Oxycontin, codeine, Percocet, and effectively they were just videos designed to promote websites where people could go. When you factor in how popular YouTube is with teens and preteens, that's a really dangerous combination. And one of the things we've done in the last week is really call on Google, which owns YouTube, to spend more time policing YouTube. We really hope they do.
Henry from Tampa, Florida writes, I agree this is a problem, but I'm concerned that in trying to put protections in place, we'll end up limiting the internet so much that we'll no longer be able to use it in the way we want to. How do we keep the internet as free as possible?
We share that goal, and the best way we do that is to find community solutions where individuals, interested groups, and internet companies find those solutions, because those are the most flexible and ways to do it. Typically, government steps in when they find that those things haven't taken place. So frankly, shame on us if in the process we don't come up with those solutions.
Jennifer from Herndon, Virginia writes, we've been hearing a lot in the news lately about the government monitoring our phones and online activity. None of us wants the government prying into our lives, so what is a right way for civic leaders to address these problems?
Well, there's a couple different issues here, and there's probably a balance. There's a question of privacy, which we all deserve when it comes to the internet. We should be allowed to put whatever we want on, we should be able to share what we want to share and not share what we don't. And that's a lot of what comes into here. There's an example of an online pharmacy that took a woman's order, several people's order, for prescription drugs, and then used that information to call up in this case, a woman, call her up and claim to be a DEA agent and said they were investigating her for buying drugs illegally online. And in the end, they agreed to allow the investigation to end if she paid an administrative fee, which was essentially extortion. So here's an instance where one of the dangers of online pharmacies, rogue online pharmacies, is one, you make an order that is illegal. Two, you may not get what you're asking for. And three, they then turn around and offer and extort you by using that information against you. So it really speaks to the issue of why we need to keep privacy intact. And it's something that I know I have a personal strong opinion about, and something Digital Citizens believes very strongly about. All right. We want to thank you for taking the time. I think that's all the time we have today. And really, really great questions. And this is our first webinar. And so we look forward to continuing this conversation. We like to have a conversation with all the folks who are interested in internet safety. And a great way for us to have that conversation is on Facebook. If you go to our Facebook page and like us and follow us, please submit questions on our Facebook page. I'll promise I'll actually answer them as quick as we can and provide you with any resources we can. So again, thank you very much for joining today, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
The teleforum has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.